Charles, you want to just indicate that you're online? I think I see you. You can just...
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Morning, Chairman. I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Members, let me apologize for... Yes, and if there are other members, feel free to join virtually as well, and you can participate via that means. Yes, Member Henriquez. He'll be late as well. Okay, thank you. Members, let me apologize for the absence of the minutes. Our committee clerk is also clerk to a number of other committees and wasn't able to complete the minutes for today, so we will take it at our next meeting. There was one matter which was raised at the last meeting in terms of an action which Member Clark had raised, and the committee clerk was asked to determine whether the PAC had examined any matter on the issue of nepotism in relation to the former Minister of Labour hiring his daughter as a liaison officer under the Canadian Farm Work Program. The issue appeared in a newspaper article in 2012. The research unit of Parliament conducted research which revealed that though there was mention of employee anomalies in the Auditor General's report of the period ending March 2012, no such finding had been highlighted in that or any of the Auditor General's report at that time, and therefore would not have been discussed by the PAC. So that was an action arising from the last meeting. Members, I'm going to invite the Auditor General's Department and both the KSAC and the St. Catherine Parish Council to come in. You could just ask them to come in, please. Everybody, invite everybody in, please. Everybody.
Chair, does it mean that I reach a bit late? My apologies. Oh, this is what Member Clark had raised, so I suppose he will discuss it when he gets here.
If he so desires, it's a follow-up to the matter he raised, and we're just providing an update based on the matter he raised.
Okay. Very well, Chair.
Good morning. Let me welcome the Auditor General and her team, the Ministry of Finance's team, and the representatives from the KSAC and the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation. Madam Auditor General, could you introduce your team, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. To my left is Christopher Hare, Audit Principal, Performance Audit. To his left is Gail Lulim, Deputy Auditor General for Economic Assessment Unit and Performance Audit. And we are supported by Wendy Ducasse, Audit Senior, and Sharice Linton, Audit Senior. And I think that rounds out my team, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Auditor General. Is there anybody from the Ministry of Finance here? Okay, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So, I am Sasha Lawrence Rose, and we have Mr. Barrington Thomas as well.
All right, thank you. Could I ask the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation, could you introduce, well, I know KSAC is here. St. Catherine isn't here. Okay, all right, well, go ahead, Mr. Town Clerk first. Mr. Hill, just introduce yourself and your team, please. Okay, thank you. And my apologies, I refer to you as town clerk. You're now CEO. Okay. It come with a raise up here? All right. Huh? What is that?
He has a very good first name, Sir Chair.
That's very subjective.
Robert.
Can I ask the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation to just introduce your team, Mr. CEO, and yourself and the other representatives? Hold on, I don't think your mic is, somehow the mic isn't on. Is it working still? No?
Andre Griffith, CEO, St. Catherine Municipal Corporation. With me is Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Ramon Fisher.
All right, thank you very much. Members, we have the brief from the Auditor General, and I'll start with the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation first, and then we'll go to St. Catherine after. So we can start with the brief from the Auditor General and the issues that would have been highlighted by the Auditor General. Madam Auditor General, I'll turn over to you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll just give you a summary of both reports. So the audit reports of the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Council and St. Catherine Municipal Council represent the final of 3 reports which were submitted into the Parliament. The audit sought to review the management system of the authorities for the rehabilitation and maintenance of Jamaica's farm and parochial road network. All 3 audits were commissioned to determine whether the roadworks were implemented effectively and efficiently to achieve value for money. I just want to highlight that the 3rd report was RADO, which was discussed at the committee before. So generally, the audits identified a lack of transparency in the selection of various road work projects, as well as inadequate management of road networks, given the absence of a robust inventory of farm and parochial roads and the state of the current road conditions. The audits also identified weak procurement management and controls over the execution of contracts, which pose a significant risk to safeguarding public funds allocated for road rehabilitation and maintenance. In addition, the absence of approved strategic plans and written policies and procedures, coupled with a misalignment of work plans with the annual budget, in several instances undermined the ability of these entities to effectively deliver on their mandates and provide assurance that the country's road network and related infrastructure met acceptable quality standards. As it pertains to the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, Municipal, an extensive network of urban and rural roads under the management of the council, which spent an average of $4.1 billion on the maintenance of the rehabilitation of the parochial roads and sidewalk verges from April 2014 to March 2020. So the audit found that KSAMC had in place qualified and trained management and staff. However, its failure to strategically plan road projects and establish performance goals and targets underscored significant weaknesses in its management system, which undermined its ability to achieve best value from the funds spent on implemented road projects. Now, as it pertains to St. Catherine Municipal Council, the council could not demonstrate that it provided strategic direction to enable the corporation to achieve its objectives and did not establish medium and long-term goals and performance targets to guide its operation. The input of the public was not sought in determining the strategic direction of the corporation and the prioritization of limited resources, contrary to the Local Government Act. Planning for the management of the parochial road network was deficient in a context where SCMC was unaware of the full extent of the network and the conditions of the roads under its purview, and did not have a transparent process of determining works to be carried out under the roads in the parish, divisional allocation, and lengthman programs. Further deficiencies in record keeping limited verification that funds allocated from the parochial revenue fund were appropriately spent. So that would conclude my summary, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hill, I don't know if you have any remarks in response to the Auditor General before we go into the specifics.
Okay, Chairman, thank you. I, first of all, Chairman, would like to express our own gratitude to the Auditor General's Department. I believe this was a fruitful learning experience. We accept the recommendations that were highlighted, and we have started already to make the necessary adjustments, certainly in terms of our management practice and our approaches, and improve the level of transparency and accountability, the governance structures that surround the management of not only our road network, but all of what we do, procurement and otherwise, Chairman. So we do accept, largely speaking, the recommendations emanating from the Auditor General's report.
Okay, Mr. Griffiths, do you have any response?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We too have accepted the recommendations of the Auditor General, and we have started to implement some of the recommendations which are made in the report. Some of these were long-standing things that should have started, but since been in the position, we have started to make some of the changes, and we are looking to improve as we go along.
All right, thank you. Members, we're going to go, start first with the brief from the Auditor General for KSAMC. And if we just go item by item, if there are questions that members have in relation to the items, start with the first issue raised, which is the KSAMC prepared budgets in response to the Ministry of Local Government's annual budget call, but failed to ensure alignment with identified road projects. And I'll just highlight in the Auditor General's report, it said the KSAMC could not provide a breakdown of the 830 million budgeted for roads and works expenditures for the 2018-2019 financial year in relation to the established annual program of works. Could you respond to that, Mr. Hill? Yes, Mr.
From which document you are, because as you are aware, Chair, there's many documents. Oh, the briefing.
The briefing.
Very well, thank you.
The briefing document, yeah. So I'm starting with KSAMC. Yes, Mr. Hill?
Chairman, yes. We did, in fact, do a review and were able to provide, if I am correct, the breakdown for the budgetary allocations. However, the weakness, Chairman, is that we did not have at the time for the period under review, we did not have an up-to-date system as it relates to our road maintenance program. Because what we would have done year on year is that we have a specific set of roads that we already know, that particularly at the head of prior to the hurricane season, we consider those necessary and urgent roads and drains to attend to. And we normally treat with those as a regular exercise of the KSAMC's road management program. Those roads affect the movement of people, transportation, communities, and the general economy, what we term as link roads or feeder roads, which link communities to main roads. Those roads as well feature long-standing drainage issues, which we also have to attend to. On top of that, Chairman, we would have strategically selected based on recommendations that would have come from our councillors and also complaints or requests from communities, neighborhoods, etc., that have been affected over a period of time and that we would have responded to. So what we have started to do, Chairman, is for a strategic cycle, we have commenced the alignment with budget and our strategic program to select a series of roads that we know require, based on recommendations and or based on what we know normally, that have to be attended to. A strategic cycle which now looks at the attendance in terms of our rehabilitation, monitoring, evaluation and assessments of the wear of these roads, the amount of persons that depend on these roads to get to their main roads, etc., and a rehabilitation schedule that enables us to have more precise monitoring. It's certainly in terms of how we budget for it, how we evaluate it, how we complete it, and how we maintain it.
So, Mr. Hill, so you would be able to provide now for financial year 21-22 a list of the critical roads that you have identified for repair and an approximate figure as to what it would cost to do those?
Well, we're not yet complete, Chairman. We have a stock of roads of 602 kilometers, which represents 1,783 roads. We have a special team that have completed of that 409 of these roads. And what we have done is to develop a data management tool to look at, based on an assessment instrument that we have developed, to look at the road conditions, to look at the level of dependability, the level of wear, the extent to which it depends on proper drainage. And then we now place that in a list of priorities to be done. This is within and outside of recommendations that will come from the elected representatives or from citizens associations. So now we have a better view, whether urban or rural, a better view of the management based on the conditions that we have researched and put down. So we would expect, Chairman, to finish that before the end of the financial year, given the limited resources in terms of capacity and staff, but we would now be in a position, say next financial year, later this financial year, for a more precise set of data as it relates to the conditions of roads and what budgetary allocations are necessary to bring them to proper usability.
All right. Member Guy?
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to know, CEO, whether, as per the report of the Auditor General, that even though this audit was completed or reported on in December 2020, whether the concern of 2018-19 of the $830 million budgeted for road and works expenditure, whether you have been able to provide that to the Auditor General at this point in time or prior to this meeting today?
We are in a position to provide some information related to that, Chairman, because we still have to ensure that our numbers are precise and that they're agreeing with the Auditor General's findings. We did, however, Chairman, have a server system breakdown, so we had to go back manually and ensure that we replace, have the figures precise and correct so that we can present to the Auditor General.
Do you have a time frame on that?
The end of July, Chairman and members.
So that would take care of 18, 19, and then what about the subsequent years, 19, 20, and
well,
then?
We have those ready. We have those.
So you have those ready?
Yes, those are ready for examination.
Okay. Member Guy, you're finished?
Yes, another matter, Chairman, but I see where in the report that it has to deal with quality of work. So I'll delay asking until then.
Member Sibley's?
It's okay, Chair. I'm looking at the first issue, and I was trying to grasp exactly what the finding is. Is it where there are variances, or is it traceability as to the what work was done? Was it done in accordance to budget? What exactly the the finding is saying, because I'm not too clear as to the finding.
Madam AG, can you elaborate?
I'll read the findings to Member Sibley's, Mr. Chair.
I don't want it to be read. Because I have read it, Madam Auditor General. I have read it. What I am asking is it, can you just answer, does it have to be with traceability, or does it have to do with variance based on what was budgeted, or is it both? That's what I want to know. Okay. Or is none of the above?
Okay. As the CEO, Robert Hill, indicated, the budget for the period is $830 million. The budget sets out how that $830 million is allocated, but the council was not in a position to show us what constitutes the works that would constitute the amounts under the various activities. I don't know that anyway. Let's leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. All right, issue 1.1, any questions on that one? Members? Issue number 2. Just for clarity for me,
Before you go,
oh, sorry, go ahead, member.
yes. Dear CEO, there has been a concern and ignorance on the part of many persons as to which roads in the corporate area really belong to the municipal corporation and those that are the responsibility of the National Works Agency. You will recall that I asked you about a particular section of road that needed a little patching, and I was told to refer that to the National Works Agency, which I did, and it was done. But the truth is that with the hundreds of roads and the hundreds of miles of roads that are kilometers that you have, or thousands of kilometers of roads that you have, is there within the municipal corporation, and also whether there it is for the public's view, a listing of the roads that are excluded from your work? Because I think that would or ought to be something that is out there for the public to see, so that they will have an idea as to who to blame when there's a problem, or who to call when there's a problem. And unlike my inundating your number with a concern about a parish, NWA road, vis-a-vis a parish council road or a municipal corporation road, could that be produced so that the public generally will have an idea as to which roads belong to which agency?
Well, remember, guys, you know they call the MP regardless.
Yeah, I know.
Wherever the road is, you need to fix it. But go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member Guy. Member Guy, remember that we are here to serve, so I have no issue with you inundating my number in relation to public complaints or concerns that, Member Guy? May I?
Go ahead, Mr.
That may come. We are here as an organization to ensure that we provide quality service and make representation, even if it is not our direct responsibility. As it relates to the list of roads, Chairman and members, I would suggest that once we complete this list, as I indicated before, we have a special team going through the development of the conditions of roads that are under our responsibility. We also would have been in dialogue with the NWA, because sometimes the public, as you are quite correct, are not clear as to which roads are whose responsibility. And so we have been in dialogue to ensure that there is a clear delineation, clear demarcation. Classically speaking, however, all the main roads are the responsibility of the National Works Agency. There are parochial roads that perform or are regarded as main roads, particularly in rural St. Andrew, that we also have under our responsibility. Many of the times, Chairman and members, when it comes down to the level of repairs, particularly under emergency circumstances, we often share or bear the cost of repairs between ourselves and NWA, where there are the strict adherence to procedures of procurement, and that we ensure that there is quality of work done where this is concerned. But we are still working on that strict delineation between the responsibility of roads that fall under the KSAMC vis-a-vis those that fall under the National Works Agency's responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Any questions on, you're not, 1 second, Member Guy, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Chairman, Mr. Hill, I'm a little constrained to accept the last part of the commentary you made a while ago, that in many instances where you share and bear the cost of the road with the National Works Agency, and you say in particular where procurement practices are concerned, and I juxtapose that against issue 9.1, where the AUGD's department says that the significant 89.84% of contracts of the 630 were either direct or emergency contracting procurement methodologies. So you had just over 10% remaining, and within that 10%, those that would fall with the joint bear and share with the National Works Agency and the Municipal Corporation would fall within that 10%. So the idea that there is a significant collaboration with the bear and share and the fixing of the roads, and as you pointed out to the procurement practices, suggests to me that that is minuscule in terms of the total numbers that you have to deal with of the 630 contracts. Just a commentary, and I'd like, if you can, to make any further commentary on that.
Member Guy, as the report would have stated, I can't veer from that, which has been put forward by Auditor General. I know that as per the report, that we relied on the procurement guidelines, yes? Particularly sections 1.13, 1.14 and 1.15. 1.15 speaks to emergency contracting. We adhered to the contracting based on a number of factors, and that were open to us based on the procurement guidelines that support that. We also have a very robust procurement committee in place, that it is not simply this chief engineering officer's recommendation to me. It goes through a system of scrutiny that allows for intensive review prior to approval. So it is a series of recommendations, and these works, Chairman, fall within the procurement threshold. Largely speaking, most of these works are small works based on comparative analysis of community-based or link roads. They are not main roads at all. And so therefore, based on the recommendations, investigations, evaluation, and assessment of the Chief Engineering Officer, these are taken to the Procurement Committee with a recommendation for the type of application under the procurement guidelines which were used. So the vast number, I won't disagree, of contracts were awarded using direct contracting methodology or selective contracting methodology, dependent on the value of works to be procured.
Do you do in-house works as well?
In-house work?
Meaning, as is done in many corporations across the country, that the parish council or the municipal corporation, and pardon me, I belong to a particular era, but the municipal corporations, what they do is that they procure material, they procure labor, they procure equipment.
What, you mean what is popularly known as force account?
Yes.
We have stopped using that methodology for the past nearly 5 years now. Chairman, I will say that since the change of administration, His Worship the Mayor had instructed that, albeit it's not a practice that is encouraged, but he instructed that we cease using that methodology and rely on the more transparent process of the using the procurement guidelines. So we have done away with that practice for some time now, sir.
Member Holness.
Morning, Mrs. Holness.
Don't think that mic working. Use the other one. Huh?
TC, Mr. Hill.
Yes, good morning.
I had gone through Kingston's report, and I'm not finding any issues of misappropriation of funds, any malfeasance. So I'm taking a slightly different approach to asking the questions. I don't think the public cares if roads are parochial or main roads or NAA roads. But I saw the Auditor General at pains to try to get us to a place where we are more strategic in how we plan for and execute the repairs of our road network. In my own constituency, there is a stark difference between roads done by the NAA sometimes, where I would have just repaired a section of road, probably a year, 2 years, and another piece of road is repaired under the parish council. And when I'm driving back trying to figure out where exactly was that piece of good road from the parish council, it's gone. So for me, I believe that it is very critical for item 5 in terms of your planning critically where your road networks are, hurry up and get it done so that all of us know, 1, and 2, sitting down now and prioritizing that 1, this road needs to get done first, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, instead of depending on us, the persons who are representatives, to tell us this is the road that we must get done. I don't think we really do much consultation, regardless of saying so. We are asked as MPs or councillors to tell you which road our constituents are clamoring for. So it would be good if the next time we see you, you're at a place where we see a wonderful document that tells us strategically where the efforts need to be placed. And why it is important, very often, a member of parliament trying to get a road done under NAA doesn't have adequate funding, and the parish council trying to get a road done doesn't have adequate funding, and it is not all the time that the two roads do not necessarily converge. Very often, we actually still work on the same roads. So if we could put ourselves in a place where strategically we sit down constituency by constituency and we target priority road 1, priority road 2, priority road 3, 4. It doesn't matter who the representative is. It means that strategically this is how we are going to get a particular constituency up to a place where roads can be better utilized. And it therefore means that when you spend on the maintenance aspect of it, you're at a place where strategically you're rolling out roads to last you for an extended period. You keep patching those while you move on to others to last you for an extended period. I'm not seeing that, and I noticed the Auditor General was at pains to get us to that place. So, Mr. Hill, my sole question to you is, you said sometime by February 2021, you're scheduled to complete your road system, your database for your road system schedule. That was in this report. I'm not sure if you're there. Are you there? If not, at what stage would you be able to present a system of road network to us that sort of outlines what I have asked for, what your Auditor General has asked for, in a more strategic way?
Thank you very much, Member Holness. I believe that is a rather comprehensive question. We have commenced and still are going through, Member Holness, what we term as our comprehensive road maintenance plan. That plan, as I would have mentioned before, is assessing and evaluating of the 602 kilometers, 1783 roads under our direct responsibility. We have a special team which have now completed up to 409 of these roads, Member Holders. We are constrained certainly by capacity, and I know COVID is a general excuse, but in this case it is actually real. And the fact that it does take some time, even with the stated deadline that we had, we realize that it has taken far more time. We would not want to rush this type of research. And to ensure that we have a comprehensive plan, we have already started to put on our system an implementation. For example, I have here roads that would have already been completed, what we term as our link road report, which looks at the several features. I could just name them. Certainly the conditions, it looks at the dimensions, the type of road, and what the features would be, the potholes, cracking, stormwater, overgrown vegetation. All of those are taken into consideration, costed and measured. And this is what we depend on. When, however, we are completed that road maintenance plan, Member Holness, we therefore go through the system would have highlighted, based on the conditions on its own, which are major priorities, which are secondary priorities. And secondary doesn't mean it can wait long, but because of the impact that it would have on the movement of people and on the local economy, those conditions and those components are first considered. I also wanted to just also highlight, Member Holness, for quality control purposes, good governance and transparency, that we have also implemented what we term as a certificate of practical completion, that when a road is awarded and the chief engineer continues his assessment, before a final payment is made, we use this instrument as a prominent record of what we would have found to be satisfactory before we sign off and close that contract. So it is a work in progress. Admittedly, it has taken longer, but I believe that if we take the time to build quality database, that it will be down to the benefit of to the citizens of Kingston and St. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Members, Chairman, we were going item by...
Chairman.
Yes, Member Guy.
I have a follow-up here.
Yeah.
And I was waiting what Mr. Hill opened the door in terms of the quality of work. What is the quality of expertise in terms of qualifications of your officers who go out there to do the assessment? And what level of training do they have in terms of, and I hope your city engineers here, what level of training,
he just came in, yeah.
What level of training they have to be able to do this. And I say that against the background that too often there's a comparison between cost of work done, well, assessed by the municipal corporations and that done by the National Works Agency, and there's a significant variance in terms of the cost. And we see too that the roads don't stand up for any significant period of time. So my question is, what level of expertise does the engineering department have? And in terms of the officers who go out there in the field to do their assessment, make their recommendations, and do the costings for the repairs?
Thank you for that question, Member Guy. I am pleased to receive that question. Our chief engineer, Mr. Xavier Chevans, is a qualified engineer postgraduate level and is also a certified professional engineer for works. And our works staff, I must also underscore the point that we have limited staff capacity. It is not peculiar to Kingston and St. Andrews Corporation. It's a system-wide issue right throughout the local government system. What we have done is to attract qualified personnel who are able, with the limited resources and limited support, to carry out what we term as, and what we have proven to be, quality road works. I mean, the engineer can speak more precisely to that, but certainly, Member Guy, our core of engineers, if I may use that term, are properly qualified, certified persons who are capable of carrying out the works and monitoring and inspecting and evaluating and reporting on the works that have been contracted and have been given for roads for improvements. We are constrained. I would want to just place on record again that we have limited staff, particularly in the roads and works section, because it is broken into buildings and works. The roads and works section is by personnel smaller than the building inspection section, if I may use those terms. So we are still seeking to expand strategically. Our strategic document speaks to it, to expand the capability and capacity of the works section, roads and works section of our engineering department, to ensure that we can provide more distinctive coverage right across Kingston and St. Andrew.
I'm happy that you mentioned the qualifications, and indeed there are significant qualifications, yes, of your chief engineer. But I'd be more interested to know what the others have, because certainly the chief engineer will not be able to have oversight of all the, right, the projects that are done. Ultimately, he's at the head of that particular stream and has to take responsibility. But I think the other members here, as well as myself, would like to know what is the cadre of the qualifications, certainly, of those persons.
If I may suggest, then, Member Guy, a band within which they fall. The maximum would be the chief engineer at the level of a postgraduate master's degree, professional engineer. Within that scope, the least of which has a certificate from a, what should I say, undergraduate certificate. Not to the level of a degree, associate degree, moving towards a first degree.
CEO, I think the committee members would be better served if we had a listing, say, okay, we have 20 persons.
Oh, I see.
We have 5 who have bachelors, that sort of thing. And
more than that, Mr. Guy. More than that, Member Guy. Your chief engineer, is the chief engineer directed at more substantial projects, or does the chief engineer from time to time go and re-inspect projects that were previously inspected by other engineers?
Oh, more so, I would suggest a mix of the two, Mrs. Holness. But he does, in fact, have overall responsibility for quality control. And he does do his own independent inspections.
Do you have a report that outlines at the KSAMC the volume of re-inspections done by your chief engineer? And why I'm asking this, when you look through the Auditor General's report and briefing to Parliament in terms of the volume of reporting and information available when requested at the point in time to do an assessment of the quality controls and checks, you were not getting a sense that information was immediately available. So, following on Member Guy's question, very critical. If you are not doing so yet, yes, providing the cadre of qualification helps, but I would recommend as well that your chief engineer has a program of auditing the quality of work done and do a secondary check so that, I'll leave it there.
Okay, well, thank you, Member Holness, and your recommendation is wholly accepted. Accepted.
Mr. Hill, can I go to issue 3.2 on the issue of consultations with communities in developing your strategic plans? Under the divisional allocation fund, are councils required to have a consultation within their division which would inform that plan, which could be a basis for your community consultation? And if so, is that being done, and to what extent is that being done? And would, for example, when MPs have their consultations under the CDF, and they are generally KSAC reps there, does that qualify as part of your consultative process? Because you generally get feedback there on issues related to the communities, etc.
Yes, Chairman. Let me answer the second question first. Yes, it does in many respects. I know that when the various CDF, as you would have said, the CDF consultations take place, and there is some amount of responsibility and or oversight or contract management to be done or execution to be done by the KSAMC. The record of expressions based on what the community members would have said is also taken into consideration. I also wanted to, in answering the first...
No, please repeat. Are you speaking about the CDF in terms of the records and recommendations from...
Yes, Mrs. Sweet.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're very clear that that is really CDF.
Yes, Mrs.
I'm very interested to hear what the chairman is asking about as it relates to the parish council. So be very clear in terms of the consultation done at that level.
As I said, the KSAMC would participate in the consultations once invited to participate at that level.
Now waiting for him to answer the first question.
Anything else?
No, Member Holness, he was answering the second question first. He's coming to my first question now.
Right. In relation to the first question, where councillors would lead community consultations, this admittedly has been done in a limited way and does require some improvement. It does not say it does not happen. Councillors meet with their respective community organizations, and they reflect the wishes, needs of those communities based on a recommendation brought to either myself or Chief Engineering Officer for attention to be put on a particular road, drain, or parish infrastructure.
But Mr. Hill, what I think, Member Holness and myself, yes. Is it a requirement, in the same way, for example, for us, the CDF requires a consultation prior to disbursement of the funds. In relation to the divisional allocation funds, is it a requirement for there to be a consultation within the division to determine priorities, and then the funds are disbursed after?
Well, truth be told, it has not been a stated requirement, because the recommendations can come in varying forms through councillors. I believe that His Worship would want to use this experience coming out of the audit to make it a requirement of his councillors, regardless of political persuasion, to ensure that this is done, because what one needs to see, certainly from the lessons brought in this audit report, is that there is a level of transparency through consultation that can be proven. And it is not simply a matter of a road being automatically selected because of other factors outside of a holistic conversation at the divisional community level that would now rise to the level of a recommendation coming forth to the KSAMC.
Chairman, in addition to that, Mr. Hill, for those members of Parliament who are aggressive about ensuring that they do their CDF consultation, and I know Chairman is one of those members who find consultations very critical to the process of approving his own CDF projects. I've watched. These meetings actually help the citizens significantly. What it does, it helps them to have an appreciation for the resources. And I can tell you, my own councillors and me, we are always at loggerheads because citizens have no appreciation that councillors get resources, and they want to keep it that way. No, I'm serious. They believe that only the member of Parliament has a CDF.
This is true.
So I take this medium, I won't do it here, but my councillor's CDF, if I add the 5 councillors, including the one in Harbour View, who is on the other side, get more than 2.5 times the CDF for me as an MP. And the public needs to know. So when we have our CDF consultation meeting, what it does, the public comes and then they start to get an appreciation for what 20 million can do. Then they realize that you have to take out 5 million for education minimum. Then they realize that you have to use $1 million minimum for housing indigent. Then they realize you have to use $1 million for welfare. So what it does for them, they then sit down and say, oh, so that is how the process works. Now I have some recommendations I can make. So the CDF policy of having those consultations, I think coming out of this, it is a critical recommendation that the AG should also place in your documents, that the councillors are required to do so that each division and the citizens of each division have a clear appreciation, one, how much money the councillor gets. That's the biggest one. I'm not laughing, I know, I know. How much money the councillor gets, so it is advertised for the benefit of the public, and then what the resources can be used for, so that they can then be a part of saying, okay, if your funds, what is the equivalent? I always call it DEF, and when I'm reading these reports, it looked like I was wrong. It's DEF?
DEF.
Okay, so, okay. All right, so people really now have an appreciation and say, all right, councillor, since you're getting, for instance, $10 million, what we are recommending is that $5 million out of it go on road woy, and we want $2 million to assist with education, and we want $1 million maximum for debt benefit. You need to stop buying things for dead yard, and down the line. Don't joke, because we literally at the parish council get a lot of resources that are spent, but I don't feel that they're as accountable in the way we are, both to the Parliament through the CDF and to the people of our constituencies.
I second that, Member Holness. Madam AG.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to reinforce what Member Holness is saying. And you spoke to the CDF and the policy to have these community meetings. But for the local authorities, it's a requirement under the Act. It is a requirement.
Oh, it's a requirement?
Yes, Section 41. And it is in fact in the report. Okay. Section 41 of the Local Governance Act requires KSAMC to conduct community meetings at least once in each year to report
That's 3.2.
to the local authorities, inhabitants, on its performance and plans.
Is that only for the KSAMC or all
for
municipal
all.
corporations?
But this prompt is specific, because I made a similar point for St. Catherine as well.
Accepted. Accepted.
Members, we're going through the report. Are there any specific questions based on the issues raised by the Auditor General? Anything else? All right, now we're going to shift members to, thank you, Member Hill. Mr. Hill,
Chairman,
sorry.
Before Mr. Hill leaves...
No, he doesn't have to leave, you know.
I am asking you again, Mr. Hill. Make a commitment to doing two key things coming out of today's session. Have public consultations that are documented, because even though you're saying you have the input of the public in the response that you gave, it wasn't clear. Yeah. And I can tell you there's no consultation in my seat, I would know. So I know that we're not doing it in the way that we're supposed to. Yes, councillors would have an appreciation because they're there every day, they talk to people, they know where the larger communities are and they hear the grosses. So it is not that they are not getting the input of the public in the decisions that they make, but in a very formalized way. I believe it is critical that at least once every 2 years you have a formal sit-down, division by division, with members of the public so they can know what councillors get and be a part of determining how the fund should be used. And two, very critically, the strategic outline of the road network. Yes, it is very important because it also allows for the KSAMC to get support from the Kingston members of parliament, who would be able to take this document up and say, okay, if strategically this is where you're heading, then, no, I have to say Kingston and St. Andrew because that's what... No, you said Kingston alone. Oh, Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation is focused on. So yes, because I'm St. Andrew actually. So those are the two key findings I thought from the report that really needs your push and direction. And if His Worship could find the resources, or Minister Mackenzie through the PS can find the resources, it would be good for you not to be in a place to have any excuse why you do not have such a strategic plan in place. Please focus on it.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Holness. I think that is quite instructive. As a closing response, Chair?
Yes, Mr. Hill.
I want to express certainly my gratitude and appreciation for the experience here, and also to the Auditor General's Department, because we have used this as a development tool in-house to build on, and that we want to ensure that not only KSAMC, but the other local authorities that will certainly be required to appear can use our experience as an example, that the requirements of good governance, certainly underpinned by transparency, accountability, consultation, and proper record keeping and reporting, are what underscore the quality of work and quality of leadership at the local government level. Mrs. Holness, I hear you. Certainly in terms of the consultations, I'm happy to report that even during the emergency rains last year, we had but a few public consultations in a couple of divisions, and we do have the reports from those. We used those consultations as part of our instructive, to develop our draft strategic plan, 2021 to 25. This was one of the commitments that was made. It is still in draft, but I wanted to just explain and express graphically that it is something that the KSAMC is absolutely committed to, and part of those consultations give energy to the development of this draft document. And so as we continue with the learning and development process, I also just want to do a quick thing, Mrs. Holness, and for members, that the DAF is from the Road Maintenance Fund, and it only can be used for road maintenance issues. So the consultations around the community table have to now look at how we prioritize roads based on, one, the community's own value of that space, matched with the resources, matched with the strategic direction of the KSAMC. So with that, I'd like to express my...
Mr. Hill, I'm sorry that I'm speaking after your parting shot, but you made mention of one of the consultations.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think it is, I actually forgot about it because we were discussing roads, but it was a very critical consultation in the area of 7 Mile,
Yes,
8 Mile Bull Bay, when
Yes,
we
ma'am.
had the serious rainfall
Yes.
and quite a bit of the areas having major landslides.
Yes, yes.
I believe it was a very good move and one that you should continue to follow through on.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it started to give residents a sense of developmental requirements. For the first time, persons realized that their houses needed to have some sort of building
Quite
approval.
correct. Quite correct.
And for the very first time, I must say, in Bull Bay, I knew of people who called when they saw persons building now on the beach to say, can the KSAMC come and take a look at this? It had not happened before.
And we have.
So
yes.
the culture has changed,
Yes.
and the community embraced that consultation, which gave them a greater appreciation for the building requirements, how they should plan and build, and where they should live. And I commend the KSAC for that.
Thank
I
you.
would love for you to keep it up and do far more consultation on roads.
Thank you, Mrs. Owens. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Charles?
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Hill, I just wanted to take a few seconds to say thank you for your explanations. I'm so impressed and happy to be here listening to you and your team, and I just want to congratulate you on the work that you've been doing and your openness to building a better Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Member Charles.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Griffith, some of the same issues that were raised in relation to the KSMC are also evident in relation to the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation. The absence of the strategic plan, the absence of consultation, the failure to prepare annual procurement plan. Many of the same issues are there. In terms of the, I've seen your management response. You have submitted your 5-year plan November last year. That has been okay.
Yes, we have.
In terms of, just to follow up on the same issue we raised with the KSAMC, what is the level of consultation, divisional consultations that take place in your municipality?
Previously to COVID, Chairman, we had consultations within each division. It was at least, we had at least twice per month. In those consultations.
Twice per month?
Yes.
In each division?
No, we have 29 divisions, so we do 2 divisions per month. Because we used to give like a 2-week cycle for advertising for the location, and also to invite the other agencies who we'd have. So we'd have like Ministry of Health, RADA, police, and most definitely the councillors and some of the members of staff, mainly the Chief Engineering Officer and the Director of Planning. So from those, SDC would have also been a part of those consultations, and national land agency, because we have some land issues within the parish that we wanted to have highlighted, because some of the persons in the parish don't necessarily know the process to get their properties formalized. So we would invite various entities to those consultations. We haven't had any for about 2.5 years, and we had documented those consultations when we had, because we had to carry somebody to record the concerns that were raised at the community meetings.
Again, a similar question raised for the KSMNC. What is the personnel that you have in place in terms of the engineering capacity to deal with roads and other works in terms of qualifications and the number of persons you have?
We have limited staffing for roads and works and building. What we have separate though, we have a team that we use for the rehabilitation of roads within the parish. It's a small team with limited equipment. So they take on some of the repairs in the divisions when it comes on to repairs based on the drawdown from each of the divisions.
Well, Member Holness, then Member Sibley's.
Yes. You want to go with clarification? Want clarification?
All right, go ahead, Member Sibley's.
Mr. CEO, you said limited staff,
yes,
and then limited tools, equipment.
Right.
Can you just explain that, because that is kind of vague to me?
All right, the staffing we have.
To explain it yet, hold on a moment, because it is going to come in the question I'm asking. I remember coming to this house and going through a session with St. Catherine Parish Council at the time, Westmoreland, Mandeville. I don't think the KSAMC was there then, or in addition to the KSAMC. And what I found very stark was that the controls were far weaker. The reporting timetable where you had to reach in terms of financial statements, bank reconciliations, were way behind. So the difference I find with St. Catherine and the KSAMC, why I'm concerned, if you're in a place where your financial records are not keeping pace, your reconciliations are not keeping pace, then it becomes of greater concern when you have issues like you have at the KSAMC of not planning strategically, not having enough transparency in terms of how your roads are done, how your, not DF, your procurement is done. I'm a little more concerned. I don't know if the Auditor General would like to help in this respect, or if the Permanent Secretary, because I was concerned. I remember vividly coming out of that session, and I still notice that you are way behind. You're still at 2011, 2012 in terms of getting your financial statements out. I remembered your bank reconciliations were not up to date. It still sits with me. So if you're not careful, if your systems are weak, you will have problems within the municipality, and it will take you a long time to realize that something is untoward.
All right, for the Roads and Works team, we have Chief Engineering Officer who supervises everybody. Then we have our deputy. He has an assistant soup, but she's not with Roads and Works, she's with building.
Just a minute. Chair, for ease of understanding, I'm just going to rephrase the question. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us how many persons you ought to have and how many persons you have? And you can tell us what are the critical positions that are now vacant, okay? And what are the critical equipment you don't have that you need? Thank you.
We have 3 works overseers who deal with oversee roads and works in the parish. 3 works overseers. In terms of, I mentioned that we have a small team that deals with repairs. The team has a small truck, a small walk-behind roller, hand roller, and a pickup. Anything else that we use, we have to rent or contract out. So we don't have any heavy equipment to use in our road repairs.
Just for my clarity, so you have the equivalent of a chief engineer. You said three overseers.
3 works overseers.
Who would report to that person?
Right.
Okay. Let me ask a question, Mr. Griffith. What percentage of the road repairs would you be done by what you would call the force account, which would be your own personnel versus going through a contracting process?
Probably about a 10% we use force account on.
So Sibley's, you had a follow-up?
Yes, Chair. I would like for the CEO to, I'm not sure if the CEO had made it very clear as to the amount of vacancies that is at the St. Catherine Municipal Council. He has not made that clear, and I just want to also ask the CEO to follow up with Member Holness's questions. Is that the management of the corporation as it relates to bank reconciliation, financial statements being up to date, evaluation of even your chief engineer. Since his recruitment, the Auditor General put in a report that no evaluation has been done. What is being done from a management level? Since you are the ultimate person, you are the chief executive officer, what is going to be done differently to ensure that these things are brought up to date? And how soon? Because Member Holness, who said that she was here some time ago, and this is similar. So the question is when? How long it will take you to bring these things up to date? Thank you.
We presently do have no vacancies in roads and works. The vacancies that we have are in the building section. We have, I think we're short by 2 billion officers. Our financial records are behind, as indicated in the response to the Auditor General's report. We have had, though, a dedicated member of staff, because we were trying to recruit someone to focus on updating those financial records, but those recruitment methods didn't work. So we have used a dedicated member of staff to update those records, and so far you would see that some information was sent to Auditor General in the past, and presently we are up to about 2019 with the internal updates of our records.
All right, Member Guy, and then Member Clark, and then Member Charles.
CEO, I just want a little clarity here. When the question was asked by the chair in terms of the number of portion of works done by force account, you said about 10%. Is it 10% of the value of the work done, or 10% of the number of contracts that were entered into?
About 10% of the number of contracts.
Yes, thank you. Right. So would you have an idea as to what percentage of the value of work that was actually done that the 10% accounts for?
Not offhand, but that information can be provided.
It would be interesting to have that information, CEO, because invariably, and I am using what happens in other municipal corporations, that sometimes they take on these contracts that are usually of high value. So this 10% that you spoke to, I just want to know in terms of the value of these and at what proportion of the total amount spent.
Madam Auditor General, then Member Clerk.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify a matter, and probably for the CEO's benefit, just in case he is not aware. So I can confirm that the CEO submitted draft financial statements, I think in 2019,
Yes,
and then again in 2020.
Right.
But the supporting records are not available. So the schedules to support the financial statements are not ready. And as such, we could not undertake the audit.
Right.
We have since, with the support of the World Bank, embarked on a project to bring many of the municipal councils up to date with their records. And so we have since, I think, outsourced 22 financial statements. We had included St. Catherine in that, and then we had to take them out because the records are not available. So I just want the CEO to know that just having the draft is not sufficient. You have to have the records available to allow for the audit.
Through the chair, and before you respond, I know that's why I was so concerned about St. Catherine. It was not a year ago that we met in here discussing the parish councils that ended up with major fraud. And the parish councils that were weakest were the ones who had poor systems and then also had fraud and malfeasance. And at that time, it was made very clear that whatever help necessary should be sought so that you could sit down and focus on getting those financial records up to date. The AG put it very nicely. When you give drafts without support, you have given nothing. She put it very nicely. You gave nothing. So you cannot tell anybody that you gave 2019 and 2020 because I can give accounts any day with all kind of numbers. If there's nothing to support it that can be verified and checked and audited, I have submitted nothing. I am very concerned, and I'm going to ask the permanent secretary to have a discussion with the minister as it relates to the weakest parish councils. I remember saying the exact statement when we questioned the parish councils, because it means that strategically, instead of spreading our wings, we may have to pull back if we don't have adequate human resource and financial resources from some of the parish councils that are strong and have strong controls. Let them know that when you next visit them, their neck will be on the block. However, it means that we have to refocus our energies on the weak parish councils, because I do not want to be sitting here and here there is a $400 million fraud, a $500 million fraud, and people run off with taxpayers' money again. We must focus on the weak parish councils, and they must appreciate that when the Auditor General comes in, she is coming in for an audit, and you must be ready. And you cannot continue to excuse not. So when you said you didn't have adequate personnel, that's what I expected to hear, you know. At the time, it wasn't have anybody to the bank recon and wasn't anybody to the financial statements, I remember. It is very critical. And I definitely do not want to come back to any sitting and hear the parish council not being up to date in terms of its records. I can tell you the perception is it is far easier to steal from the parish council and central government. That's the perception. And if your records are not up to date and you cannot be audited, you're cementing that perception. We don't want that.
Madam AG.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, and I'm not running to the defense of St. Catherine Municipal Council, because I support everything that Member Holness has said, but I just want to reiterate that it's not St. Catherine Municipal Council. It's a pervasive issue across the parish councils. KSAMC has just been included in the audit, the outsourcing audit, but I want to restate what we would have said at the very beginning of this project, and for the benefit of KSAMC and all other councils that are party to this project, including the Parochial Revenue Fund, is that the audit is being undertaken by private auditors. They don't operate the way the Auditor General operates. We will wait ad nauseum for information to be submitted to us to help to get it right. It delays the audit, yes, but there's no additional cost to government as a consequence. That's not the case with the private auditors. Once you go outside the scope of time, you have to pay for that time, and it is expensive. We have already agreed on a band, meaning the cost, the envelope for these audits, but if the councils fail to provide the information as agreed, it is going to cost the government. Hence, why SCMC was removed, because we do not want the price to inflate. Now, I would have preferred if we were able to outsource more audits, but I'm not in a position to do that because the councils are just not ready. And in fact, I know the auditors are going to have an issue because there are some that I have actually signed off where I've given a disclaimer. And sometimes it's very difficult to come back from a disclaimer because there's no information for the auditors to rely on. So I just want to know that whereas SCMC is before us, it is not only SCMC, it is a pervasive problem. The permanent secretary can speak to that, but I must also say that I believe when we commented on KSAMC and having qualified staff, we were speaking specifically to the activities that we're looking at. I do believe that there's a weakness with respect to the financial management group within the councils, and it could be related to the remuneration, that they're not able to attract qualified staff, and that impacts the preparation, because what we have had to be doing over the period, which is not right, as auditors, the auditors, when they go in, is that they're helping them to prepare the financial statements, and then we turn around and audit it. It's not right. But if you have an auditor going in, I think St. Catherine may have engaged someone to prepare the financials. It's either St. Catherine or KSAMC. But they are all at fault, Mr. Chairman, with respect to their financial reports. And it's important that they understand the importance of submitting the information that is requested on time, because there's a cost associated with not doing so.
No, 1 minute. As said before, we realize that this is a problem. And we have somebody who is dedicated, who doesn't look on anything else but trying to update the records. We're at 2019 now, and she's working on 2020 records presently. But I'll have discussion with my chairman and see where we can try and get somebody else to complete these financial statements so we are up to date.
Madam Pierce, I'm going to direct this to you, because since this issue, as the AG has highlighted, is across the board for most of the councils, it may be in the interest of the ministry to, on a short-term basis, to hire some staff that could undertake bringing the financials of the various councils up to date. As the AG has said, the remuneration being offered probably is so low that you can't attract the kind of personnel at the specific council. But it is a big issue because, as has been highlighted, it exposes the parish councils to issues of fraud and malfeasance. So I think that is something centrally that the ministry could undertake as a project, looking at, obviously some councils are better than others and have more capacity, but ensuring that you put in place some temporary process to bring them up to date with their financials.
Chairman, members, good morning. Just to confirm that yes, the ministry had embarked on an initiative, as the Auditor General has in fact indicated, to outsource, notwithstanding that each local authority was written to and advised to bring their statements up to date. I believe the time given was August 2020 last year, and in monitoring we realized that they still had challenges. So each local authority, regardless of the type of challenge, was required to undertake whatever arrangements could be undertaken to ensure that the statements are brought up to date. while we continue to dialogue with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service in respect of any other support that could be ascertained. In respect of the remuneration, it is correct that there are considerations as it relates to remuneration. Some persons believe that the salaries are lower than it ought to be, but the remuneration within the local authorities, although we are presently looking on an organizational review, is not different from what is throughout government in respect of the levels. Notwithstanding that, we had also embarked, you may recall some time ago, I also indicated that we'll be looking at that. That project is almost complete. I was advised that there are 2 proposals on the table that are to be presented to me shortly so that we can look at it at the ministry level in order to make a formal submission to the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. And that, of course, will also include looking at the job descriptions and what obtains in the respective units to include finance and roads and works.
Through the chair. P.S. If you notice, I went at length.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you were here that sitting, but it was the same recommendation made to have Ministry of Local Government give the assistance necessary to those parish councils that needed to catch up. So separate and apart from getting adequate qualified staff to do the present, the ministry needs to do an assessment and put together a budget and very quickly get persons on board right across all municipal corporations to get their records up to date. It doesn't make sense that we keep coming and having the discussion, because all it means is that more and more, if we're not careful, will be swept under the carpet that we do not know of. We would not be in a position to say that all is well or all is not well by the time we look at those accounts. And sometimes the longer you take to have your records properly updated and vetted, you literally just close your eyes to that and just move to the current and try to stay afloat. So, Permanent Secretary, I am asking again a request made last year. Please secure the requisite budgetary support to be able to ensure that when we look at the municipal corporations, they are given the support to become current, and then they can continue from there to be monitored in keeping current.
Yes, member, and we'll take that advice and examine as best as possible with the relevant offices to ensure the recommendation is implemented.
Okay. Member Clark, you had put up your hand before. You still have your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to go back to Mr. Andre Griffiths, I heard you mention that you are short on equipment. You only have a walk behind roller and a small truck.
Yes.
And you're short staff.
Right.
Sorry?
Yes, that's what I said.
The question though, you also mentioned that you only do 10% of the road rehabilitation in the parish.
Right.
And the other 90% is done by way of contracts.
Contracts, yes, sir.
But if you only do 10%, are you still saying to us that the walk behind roller and the small truck is still woefully lacking as equipment that is to be used, seeing that 90% of the work is really not you?
Yes, but...
And when you speak of 10%, to what level are you speaking?
It's mainly patching that we do and some repairs to some drains. So we don't take on the major rehabilitation because that would be outside of the scope of that team to work. What would have been ideal is if we had more than one team working within the parish, because how it is when the councils get the PRF, the drawdown for the road maintenance, we do at least 6 per month. So at times, when the team is in one area, we'd prefer them to also have in another area to reduce the time that we take to do those repairs.
My concern, I hear what you're saying, but my concern is that if you're only doing 10% of the rehabilitation with just small patchwork, no long 1 mile or half a mile of an entire rehabilitation, resurfacing of a roadway, then the walk behind roller, which I suspect is between 2.5 ton to 5 ton, and a small truck to bring that small amount of aggregate would be sufficient. So I am still not following you down, even though I'm listening to you. I'm still not following down the road that you're trying to take us to say that you are on the.
Sometimes with the level of repairs, the team is not able to do as much work. So if we had more equipment, we could do more work.
Exactly. Which one is more value for money?
Contracted or...
Now, if we can do some of the work in-house, it would reduce how much we spend otherwise. But
are you saying that the competency is within house so that you would not have to go outside to use outside contractors to do the work? That's what you're saying?
Some of the competence is in-house, not all.
So if tomorrow morning the ministry would say, okay, we are granting you a 20-ton roller and a 30-ton dumper truck, you think you'll be able to do a lot more work?
Yes,
that's what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Member Charles.
Mr. Griffiths, I just wanted for clarity. Did you say that you hired someone that's in charge now of your financials and that you have up to 2019 and it's not a draft? Is that what you had said?
Yes, that's what I had said.
Okay.
Not hired. This person is one of the members from the accounting team.
But you're up to date now, and it's not up to 2019.
We're up to 2019 up to date, and we're working on 2020.
A draft, or you have financials and documents?
Up to 20, so that individual now is working on 2020.
Documents.
Right.
Okay.
To St. Catherine that we'd like to explore. All right, if there are, yes, member guy.
I'm going to ask the same question that I asked of the KSAMC. The qualifications of those persons in your engineering department, CEO.
It's similar qualification, member guy. The range, our engineer has a master's in construction. The deputy has a first degree in construction, and the support staff has like a certificate from a university, because some of the courses were some short courses that they had done in construction.
So this master's in construction is an engineering degree as opposed to a construction management degree?
It's an engineering degrees.
Okay.
Thank you, member guy. Members, any other questions on the St. Catherine Parish Council? Just coming back to KSAC, Mr. Hilliard said you don't do any of your roadworks internally. All of them are contracted out?
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me thank the...
Chairman,
yes, member.
Before you go, I think St. Catherine should look at it as well. I heard St. Catherine's discussion. What my observation has been in the last 5 years of being a member of Parliament, when NAA or the Parish Council, or rather, makes an effort to do in-house accounts, the idea behind it is that you can save the money you would have paid to a contractor in terms of the profit element, their insurance, and the works. So you should be able to achieve more, and because of those savings. What you find, though, some persons have had the opposite experience in terms of in-house staff being so focused on running these internal works to the distraction of being able to execute the work of the municipality across the board. And I suspect that is possibly why Kingston and St. Andrew moved away from it. Yes, it gives more transparency in outsourcing. It definitely does come at a cost, but it puts your internal staff in a place that they're not hustling and juggling and trying to do work inside. And I will say that it is public knowledge that very often the persons who are working inside own the companies that are that they're buying the material from and the works. Yes, we want to laugh, but it is, we know. You understand? So the more transparent you can make your operations, the more you can follow the procurement guidelines in terms of vetting the contractors that are used and making the process somewhat more independent. Over time, it augurs better for the municipality and for government generally.
Thank you, Member Holness. Both KSAMC and St. Catherine, I can thank you for being here, and I'll just ask you, you can excuse yourselves now.
Thank you.
And let me thank the PS. I'll come into your matter.
Sure.
Huh? You want the PS? I want to deal with Member Clark, if you could come back, because you had raised the matter at the last meeting. Where did he go? All right, until he comes back, members, the clerk just circulated a list of the matters that were before us as a committee. The ones highlighted in red were before dissolution. The ones highlighted in black are after. And I just want to highlight the ones we have not covered as yet, which I'd like to do before the Parliament goes on recess in July. So on page 3, the report of the compliance audit of the Constituency Development Fund, we have not covered, so I would put that on our list to do. The one below related to the Auditor General's audit of the CARE program, Madam AG, the clerk indicated that you felt that was not necessary to be brought here?
No, Mr. Chairman, but it's really up to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you have indicated audit, so we're not going to...
Yeah, it's a real-time audit. It was a real-time audit of the CARE program and the issues. That was just reporting what we found, matter of fact, and the issues were addressed before the disbursements were made.
Okay, thank you. So we don't need to deal with that. And then the other one, in your annual report, we had taken the Ministry of Labor and Social Security as one ministry, but there were other ministries which we had not taken. So in terms of order, I would look at the CDF as the compliance audit of the CDF at our next meeting, and then thereafter your annual report looking at issues that would have arisen from other ministries. Member Clark was about to deal with your issue that you had raised at the last meeting, and there's a report that has been provided by the research unit of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Now, Mr. Chairman, I would have asked many a question, but the question that I raised a week or so ago in particular was if to ask Madam AG what was her thoughts or her thinking, how does she view nepotism, and she said that it would have been based in the report. You could find it in the report. But Mr. Chairman, we are back at square one because the research unit at HOP would have looked at the report in particular. And the finding, if I may, Mr. Chairman, aimed to uncover if the Auditor General had found any indication of nepotism in relation to the Canadian Farm Work Program. And it speaks to Member Clark asking a question of the Auditor General at the last sitting, June 8, 2020. The finding is, and I read, the House of Parliament Research Unit conducted a study of the Auditor General's annual report for 2012, and there was no mention of nepotism within the report. However, there was one finding which highlighted that a liaison officer under the Canadian Agricultural Workers Program was being paid more than that it would have cost to employ a resident of Canada. The Auditor General report, which speaks to page 89 and 90, made mention of employment anomalies found within the MLSS. Finding are as follows. But Mr. Chairman, the finding from the research unit spoke to former Labour Minister daughter who was employed while he was the minister. The minister in question at the time, 2012, is the then Minister Derek Kelly.
Remember, that is the article that you had given to me.
No, this is a finding.
No. Just to be clear, what was highlighted? It says a news article which was written.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, S. Kelly. Okay, right. So the same research said 8.2.56. I found that an employee made false representation to support her employment to the Jamaica Liaison Service. I advised the Management Committee of the Canadian Farm Work and Factory Workers Program to investigate the matter and institute disciplinary action. The chairman of the Management Committee advised that appropriate action will be taken. But, Mr. Chairman, I go to a document This speaks to the address. It said, to be exhibit in all Jamaican work accommodation, the address and telephone number of the officers and offices and officers of the Jamaica.
Can you tell me what you're reading from so we know?
A document put out by the ministry.
The Ministry of Labour?
Yes, and it has the address, and I was reading. It has the address 230 Shepherd Avenue West, suite number 200 M2N 1N1, office toll-free number, and it gives a number, and it gives an email, jamlisa@belnet.ca, head office, and it lists the name as C.G. Anderson, K.G. Phillips, A.A. Riley, O.L. McIntosh, S.A. Smith, S. Kelly, D. Douglas, S. Wright, and it gives Leamington address it gives Kelowna, British Columbia sub-office, and it gives the Halifax number. So I suspect these are the areas that we would have offices where the liaison workers are placed.
You'd have to, what you read from, we would need to see to understand that document.
Yes.
Member Clerk. That document came, you said, from the Ministry of Labor. In what context? Was that in a report? Where did that document come from?
I just got that document. They asked my office to get it and they forwarded it to me, Mr. Chairman. So it's coming from the ministry. So you will send it?
I know, but...
So
all right,
I
can you, yes.
Can make the copy,
yes,
can make the copy available to you.
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right. You want me to send it by way of social media, or do I send it upstairs to be printed? No,
well, I mean, you'd have to send it to us, but I don't know that we can deal with it today. I mean,
all right. So we'll move on that. Okay. So I'll rest until then, sir.
Yeah. Our members can, yes, Member Holmes.
Just generally, because I'm getting from the brief, the AG saying the reason for that employment anomaly is that the person was disingenuous. They did not disclose their relation. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Chairman, Member Clark referred to two separate issues. There is one issue with a Jamaican that was brought up to the Canadian office to fill an administrative position. I voiced a concern about that in the 2012 report because it is not the practice to take Jamaicans living in Jamaica to Canada to fill an administrative position, and there's also a burden of cost on the liaison service to do so. You will actually take officers up for liaison positions. They remain Jamaicans. They are not Canadians. They have tax-free status. But the administrative positions are generally filled by either Jamaicans living in Canada or by Canadians themselves. So that's an issue. And I stated a concern because it appeared to me to be a diversion from what the policy was. I don't know that they have a specific policy to say that that should not be done, but that's the practice. And I raised it. The matter with the officer who I questioned the basis on which that person was actually brought up to Canada, because I think at the time I was able to confirm that the individual was employed to the Ministry of Agriculture during that point, is a totally separate issue. So I don't want us to confuse the issue. Mr. Chairman, I just, if you just, yeah. Yes, I want to say quickly, I didn't raise any query. No. No. I raised no query regarding any minister's daughter. I saw nothing in black and white that anybody is anybody's daughter. I know that there is a common name, and it is said, but I don't report hearsay. I report what I see. So I saw no evidence of any minister requesting that his or her daughter be employed. I saw no instructions given. I want to respond rather than going around in circles, because I suspect that the question that was posed by Member Clark at the last sitting of the PAC, probably that is where he wanted to get to when he was asking me my views on nepotism. When I speak, Member Holness said something today. She said that I was very kind in my characterization of a particular position. I choose my words very carefully when I'm writing a report. I do not report what I hear. I report what I see. If I'm not able to confirm it, I am not going to report it because someone said so. So where you see me speak about nepotism, it's because it is in black and white. It can be proven. It is explicit that that individual gave instructions. What you are referring to, Member Clerk, I saw no such instruction. But if you have evidence of it, then that can be reported. Because I also want to state, Mr. Chairman, that it's not only the Auditor General alone can report these issues. Every citizen, every member of Parliament has a right, and I think a responsibility as well, to report issues where it can be proven. I have not seen any such evidence, Mr. Chairman. Something being reported in the newspaper is not sufficient evidence. You have to provide. I don't have that leverage to report what I feel or what somebody says. I have to report what I see because member wholeness can relate to this. I have to use my professional judgment. It's against that which I'm going to be judged. So I can't just report something despite what I feel about it. Right? So I hope that that clarifies the matter. But if Member Clark has that information, then I think he can report it.
All right, thank you, Madam Auditor General. Member Guy, you wanted to intervene, or you're okay? Okay. All right, members. So to recap, Member Moreland.
Ms. Wilson, thank you, Chair.
So, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Can we have the PS from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security at the next meeting so that we can go through this matter? Because then I am still confused. I hear my colleague is saying that she's confused. And if it is because Madam AG is unable to do certain things because it is not within her professionalism to do so, then the PS should be in a position to give the answers.
Well, the question is, a report was done by the Auditor General, which is the research from the Parliament highlighted, right? Which did not deal with the specific issue you raised, and the Auditor General has indicated why she was not able to address that. So
I accept that.
You accept that?
So my concern, or the question that I'm asking of the chair, is for this committee to ask the PS to come to us to answer the question, because I still want to get to the bottom of the situation.
Well, I don't know. Because again, you'd have to allow the PS an opportunity to do research, etc., before we can ask her to come here.
Whatever the research that she has to do, Mr. Chairman, sorry, forgive me, I should have said it to you. Give her enough time to do the research, but come to us to present the finding. That's what we're asking. Or that is what I am asking as a member of the PAC.
And I know it's my fault. I think I missed the session when the question was asked. I want to understand. I get very clearly employing administrative persons from Canada. So I understand that clearly, and it would appear at this time we do not have anyone who fits that bill being Jamaican but hired in any administrative position in Canada. Correct, huh? We're not in that position, all right. So I got that part, I think, out of 8258. And to some extent, 8257, even though it is saying we don't really have copies of the permits retained at the office, but to the best of our knowledge, the only persons that we would recruit and submit there would be the liaison officers, all right, who would be on work permits with Canada. The part I'm not quite understanding is I found that an employee made false representation. Was that somebody who was a liaison officer? I found that an employee made false representation to support her employment to the Jamaican liaison service. So yes, liaison. So is that person still employed? Because it says that appropriate actions would be taken. So is that liaison officer still employed? Is that liaison officer no longer employed?
Right, my apologies. I do not believe the person was a liaison officer, and the person was not based at Shepherd. They were based at another location. And post-audit, they were, well, my understanding is that they were returned to Jamaica. Clear. It's two separate issues.
All right, so Member Clark, all right, Member Wilson, and then let me come back to Member Clark. Member Wilson, you have a question? No, I was going to just summarize, but go ahead.
All right, thank you, Chair. So, Madam AG, morning. I just wanted to know, so during your audit, this is for my information now, during your audit, when you come across information, such as this, in this case, wouldn't it be within your scope to investigate such situation such as this with the employment? Investigation of someone who may have similar names. You did say on record that you heard, through the grapevine or whatever, informally, that there may be some connection. So I'm asking if within your audit, would you normally look at the scope of expanding it to check the veracity of such accusation or claims?
Member Wilson, I did indicate that I saw no such evidence. I could only have said so if I sought to find evidence. The person was, the appointment, I'm sure, was approved by the management committee.
I understand that, but as you would have stated that they have similar names, so I'm trying to inquire whether your curiosity led you to do further investigation where you have proven weird evidence that they are not related, or there is no relation between the previous minister and this employee in particular.
All right, so let me...
That's what I'm trying to establish.
Yeah, but having similar names does not amount to nepotism. Nepotism, you can look in my example for Petrojam and for CMU, where I saw that the individuals gave instructions for the engagement of their, let me say, related parties. Specific. So if I think we should, yes. So even the management committee, there is nothing in writing to show that the management committee got instructions from anyone. So let me just reinforce that my audit results are evidence-based.
So, Mr. Chairman, I am asking the Madam AG, wouldn't it strike a chord that the Minister of Labour at the time, the election was in, I think, 2012, early 2012. Sorry, 2011, late 2011. So the swearing-in would have been in about January, February at the time. And by February 29, that person was employed. And in a strike accord, I do take what the AG is saying, and I have to accept what she's saying because she's working from a professional standpoint. Right. So it leaves me now a lot more confused, and it is on that premise, Mr. Chairman, that we're asking that we give the PS enough time to get herself the necessary information as it relates or surround this matter, so that she can be asked to join us here at PAC to answer the questions that are leaving us in a confused state.
Member Clark, before I go to the AG, just to reinforce what the AG said, even if something comes up, unless she has what you call evidence to support it, then she would not...
Mr. Chairman, I take what the AG say now. I take what the AG say.
Chairman, hold on. I think this question is causing some confusion, and I'm going to try to ask the question in this way, and hopefully it will help to clarify for members. If I am a minister and my son chooses to apply for a job within the ministry, and he goes through the process of putting in his application, being interviewed and vetted by the management committee and employed, There is no written documentation anywhere, nothing that says that I, as minister, gave any instruction to anyone to employ my son. You're doing an audit and realize that my son is employed to the ministry along with me. And in doing your checks, you can see no evidence of any instructions being given to me for the employment of my son. In fact, you have checked and you see where, I didn't see that in this case, but have the requisite qualification and went through the management committee, and management committee approved the request for employment or the position being granted. Would you, in that situation, document in your report, even if you heard rumblings and grumblings, that there is any nepotism at play? And I think that would actually help to clarify in person's head the statement. The management team employed, I saw no indication of any instruction from the minister to do so.
Well, let me also say that the review of this matter was not prompted by a newspaper article. In fact, I was supposed to actually do the checks the other day just to see the timing of my audit and the newspaper article. So I would not have gone there with the intent of seeking to determine whether or not there is nepotism. But the point that you have raised, Member Holness, whatever information is submitted and reviewed is going to be judged against criteria. Yes, if I'm going to report, I must have a basis to say that this is running contrary to what the prescribed policies and procedures were. Yes, I saw a matter and I reported it the way that I know that professionally I can report it. I am not going to report, I'm saying this to reinforce that if I see something wrong and I can link the parties definitively, I am going to report on it. I have done so. If I cannot link the parties definitively and link that this individual gave that specific, because everybody is entitled to apply for positions. Everyone is entitled, there's no restriction anywhere to say that this individual is prohibited from applying. And when I give a report, I must be able to stand by what I say. So if someone assesses it to be so, that's fine. But I have to have a reason. Another thing that Member Clark says about strike accord. Members, there are so many things that strike accord. There are so many things that I look at, and it's quite curious. Both reports in the newspaper, both things that I see and I assess. But I have no evidence that can allow me to conclude without the veracity of my conclusion being tested successfully. So I will not conclude on the side of what public sentiment is saying, but I have to conclude on the basis, and I conclude from a dispassionate position. So it's not because of how I feel, because probably if I was to report based on how I feel, the country would turn upside down. I have to report on what is in front of me, and I want Member Clark to realize that he is looking specifically at this matter. But you must be mindful that the very premise that you put forward can be applied to many other situations, and your view on that may not be the same. I, on the other hand, take a consistent approach. So if this is how I examine it for A, it is the same way I'm going to examine it for B and C. I am not partial in how I review these matters. I come from a dispassionate position, and I maintain and I take pride in that.
Members, to summarize the issue, because the Auditor General has been very clear in terms of her position in relation to this. I was just consulting with the committee clerk. The only way we can bring back this matter is if the committee is saying that we want to revisit the audit of the Canadian Farm Work Program. All right? Now, we don't have a capacity to ask a permanent secretary to investigate a matter that would have been 9 years ago, right? And the permanent secretary wouldn't necessarily have the capacity to do that investigation. So the only way we can bring it back, because we deal with matters that arise from reports that are here, and there is as the Auditor General said, it is referenced in our 2012 report. So we would not have the capacity, Member Clerk, to direct a PS to commence an investigation for something which took place 9 years ago. The only way the matter can be brought back is if we are saying, as a committee, we want to revisit the Auditor General's report of the Canadian Farm Work Program of 2012.
That is exactly what, as a member, or one of the members of this PSC, Leroy Clark, is asking. If it is the wish of my fellow colleagues, then the majority will carry.
Chairman.
Member Guy. Yeah.
Chairman, I have no objection to the member asking, but I think for that matter to be discussed in the PSC is a matter, quite frankly, I think could be addressed another way if the member is so inclined. And I think that a matter of that nature, if there are still concerns about it, and it is not a matter relating to the accounts of the Canadian Farm Work Program, which AG was the person who was requested to do those accounts from then coming up, that particular matter could be referred to the Integrity Commission, for the Integrity Commission to do that particular investigation and then present it to the Parliament as part of its report. And I think that would be the way to have it done if the member is so inclined to have it.
My understanding, and I may be very slow in terms of my capability to comprehend, the permanent secretary at the time in doing the audit would have been a part of any discussion that the Auditor General had in respect of having heard and probably still wondering, what is the connection? Is there a connection? Is there any instruction? I'm putting words in her mouth and history behind it. But what I heard her clearly say is, on the basis of whatever she would have an inkling to perceive, she would have then gone to do the necessary checks to see if, yes, she said she checked. So she's saying, look, I can't go based on hearsay. I hear say somebody may be related, the names them sound very close. Kelly is actually not a common name. So she probably would have had some inkling to wonder, is something up? But she made a clear statement that she did her checks. And having checked the documentation at the time that is available for her to review did not support her coming with any other finding. That's what she said.
And that is the age, and I accept that. I accept that. What I was asking for is for the PS. So if you are saying that what the AG has reported or has said just now would be the same thing that the PS is saying, then we leave it.
Unless the PS is going to now come and tell us that she lied to the Auditor General or hid the documentation from the Auditor General.
It's a new PS.
I'd actually asked the same question too,
right.
if
It's
it was the same PS. I actually asked that
right.
off mic, if it was a different PS. So I am of the view that even if something was wrong at the time, we have to leave it at this stage because it had the benefit of at least the oversight of the Auditor General, and Madam AG at the time would have at least done a look at. My expectation and understanding is that Madam AG would have been dispassionate, would have had no reason to be in a place to not just investigate the evidence and documentation as is and report on as is. And I would have to say I would take what her findings are from a professional standpoint. I do not think at this stage it would make sense to ask the permanent secretary to come back in or for us to go back into the audit report of 2012, because I do not see us finding anything different from what has been previously stated.
Yes, Madam AG.
Yeah, just to follow on, not directly related, but just to speak generally, that it is the accounting officer under the Constitution that has responsibility. The minister is not supposed to be involved in administrative affairs at all. Where you would have seen in a report where I make reference to the minister, it is because that minister inserted himself in the process, and I could see very clearly that he did. That is what allowed me to speak to the minister. But whereas as it pertains to hiring, all financial management, the fiduciary responsibility rests with the accounting officer. So it doesn't matter what instruction is given to the accounting officer. If the accounting officer feels pressured to carry out that instruction, he or she must document it and say, look, you have asked me to do this. I do not agree with it, yet I will have to implement it because your instructions are so and so and so. Otherwise, I cannot tell you what has happened behind closed doors, and in discussions, I can only speak to what is in writing. But I just want the members to understand that very clearly, that the responsibility for running the government on an administrative day-to-day basis, as prescribed in the Constitution, is that of the accounting officer. And that is why the accounting officer must ensure there is a trail of audit evidence to support whatever decision is taken. By right, a minister is not supposed to be involved in payments. A minister is not supposed to be giving instruction as to who should be paid, who should be getting contracts, who should be hired. A minister ought not to be involved in that process. I may hear that the minister is involved in it, but I don't have any evidence. I can only report on what is involved, what I see written. Yes.
Chairman, I'll reiterate that we'll get nothing further.
Right.
I'm actually happy that Madam AG went through the process of giving even further clarification, because I now understand why there was a perception that there was an issue because the minister inserted himself and in some way got involved. I reiterate the fact that she checked the documentation, and having checked the documentation, she did not have anything in black and white to proceed further, even though she had her own concerns. What I take away from this, I am hoping our current ministers are listening in so that they can also appreciate that we must learn from the mistakes of the past, and that no minister should take on the responsibility of executing the job of the permanent secretary or the financial secretary, as the case may be, as those individuals are the accountable officer to the people and to the government. I hope they're hearing and learning, because many persons do find themselves in that place from time to time over the years where people will say, they told me to do so and they told me to do so. And I'm hoping permanent secretaries are listening as well to say, look here, if you do that, put it in writing, boss, so that I can say, see it here, I told you no, and you insisted, and I have it in writing. So we will take away from this that we can't rehash 9 years ago, but we will learn from the lesson, and we will ensure and endeavor not to have something like that repeat itself.
Member Holness, thank you. So members, just to summarize, so we can close the meeting, we're not going back to this issue. If the member so desires, as Member Guy has said, he could raise it separately with the Integrity Commission, but we wouldn't get any further bringing back the PS or the report from 2012. Could I have a motion for the adjournment? Member Holness, seconded by Member Miller. Thank you, members. So I see you next week, Tuesday.